This is our first meeting of the new year, 2026. So I want to say a belated Happy New Year to everyone. We're getting ready for our March program, our TEI March program, where we're offering 11 different courses in evaluation training. We're going to be addressing topics such as logic models and program theory, mixed methods, machine learning, several artificial intelligence courses, data visualization, UFE, applied measurement, public health evaluation. So I hope you can join us. It's going to be a very robust March program this year. In our webinar today, we have a very special guest, Professor Ernest House, who is a pioneering evaluation theorist who helped establish evaluation as a distinct profession and discipline, which I hope you learned about when you read his article on creative ideas in evaluation that we're going to be talking about topics in that article today. His work over many years created influential ideas, including social justice in evaluation, validity as an argument, deliberative democratic evaluation, and realism. He held appointments at both the University of Illinois and then after that at the University of Colorado Boulder, where he's Professor Emeritus today. His work bridged philosophy, politics, and methodology to reshape our thinking about causation, values, bias, and has had a lasting impact on evaluation theory, practice, ethics, and the integrity of public decision making. So I'm going to kick it off today with a few questions for Professor House. But what I would like you to do, now you've had a chance to look at his latest article, is in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, if you could begin typing any questions you have, I will go through those and select out as many as possible to ask our guests to reflect on. So thanks again, Ernie, for joining us. I wanted to just start with creativity, if that's okay. In your article, you describe creativity as taking ideas from one framework and applying them to another. You often, imported insights from philosophy, economics, politics, literature into evaluation. What conditions do you think are most necessary today for evaluators to generate genuinely creative ideas?
Oh, thanks, Stewart. Glad to be here and talk to you, your students, maybe a few old colleagues out there. Well, today's pretty tough times. Let me go back to the beginning of evaluation 60 years ago, in my case. 1967, there were 3 papers, one by Cronbach, one by Scriven, one by Sting. So that was it. That was evaluation literature. So there was no field of evaluation 60 years ago, as we now understand it, program evaluation. I took Stig's paper, used that to look across and think about programs in a broad sense, and I developed the first evaluation of the Illinois gifted program. Now, at that time, there weren't many ideas, so anything you did was kind of outstanding because you're creating something new. Say 1+1's 2. Wow, what an idea. So there are things that might seem a little ordinary now that we came up with back in those days. But generally, with creativity, creating new ideas, I usually I look inside the field to find something. For example, when I wanted to do evaluate some accountability systems like the Michigan Accountability System. I have those resources within the field. I looked at Scriven's ideas of meta evaluation, and I used those to evaluate the Michigan Accountability System along with Dan Stuffenbeam. And so those were there. Now, later on, after I'd evaluated the Illinois program, gifted program, I worried about the people who are not in the program. I don't know why, but it just bothered me. I did a good evaluation, reported to the legislature, went through the whole politics of how to present this to the legislature, and that worked out fine. But I had done nothing with what about students who are left out of the program? Now, why would I worry about that? Well, I don't know. I attribute this to my mother. She's a very moral person. She's always concerned about, well, what about this person? What about that person? And so I worried about it. About that time, I saw an idea, John Rawls' theory of justice had just been published. So I read Rawls' theory of justice. In fact, I read it twice, which is this brilliant moral philosophy. Some say the best of the 20th century. And you should be concerned, he says, not only about everybody in the field or in the country, but about those people who tend to be towards the bottom of the structure. Should worry about those people who get left out. So I used that idea and I brought it into evaluation. And I made the bold statement, justice in evaluation, that evaluation should be concerned with the issues of social justice. As Rawls said, the first virtue of social institutions is social justice. And I began seeing evaluation as a social institution in and of itself that should be concerned with these things. So that was not many ideas out there. And for one case, I had ideas inside the discipline to use, and others there were none, so I had to go outside. And maybe 15 or 20 times in my career, I have gone outside, psychology, philosophy, economics, investing, and looked at other ideas and brought them into the field. So if you find stuff in the field, and now there's a lot more in the field that's available than there used to be. We didn't used to have mixed methods. We had one method or two methods. So that's all changed now, and there are more things available in the field. But if you encounter something that's not there, you might look outside. Now, how do you go about doing that? Well, one way is to do a lot of reading outside the field evaluation. I had a first-rate university education at Washington University of St. Louis, where I had physics, chemistry, math, biology, social history, ancient Greek history, everything, the languages. So I went through the whole thing. So I was able to read in other fields, and I've continued to read in these fields. Now, not physics, because I've rapidly reached my limits there. But in other fields, I have continued to read and do so. So you look outside when you need something. Now, let me say a little more about creativity here. I just read autobiography like mine of Jeremy Grantham, who's a world-famed legendary investor. And he is credited with inventing many new ways to invest and think about it, investing. He's originally a Yorkshireman. So he's got a different view of things. But he talks about how difficult it is once you bring a new idea in the field, you don't have people jumping up and down and saying, hallelujah, usually. Usually they say, God, why you say that? So you have to, when you get a new idea, you have to fight through everything. And an idea like justice and evaluation, that's a long fight. There's still people who say, well, what's that got to do with evaluation? Because we just do facts That's values, and we don't do values, the old fact value dichotomy. So there is a battle to be fought, as a movie title, one battle after another, if you bring new ideas in, nor, I might add, are you always rewarded for. John Maynard Keynes, the great economist, said in his general theory book that the best way to advance your career is to simply go with the crowd. And it's better, he said, for your career advancement to fail conventionally than to succeed unconventionally. Yeah, and I think that's true. And Grantham shows that. Now he's considered a legendary investor. Now, on the other hand, he went through a lot of stuff and suffered a lot of stuff in investing. As investing is one of the outside fields I tend to read in. So those are some ideas I've had about creating new ideas.
Okay, great. So looking across your work, from social justice to validity to deliberate democratic evaluation, conflict of interest bias, what do you see as the next major conceptual shift or creative frontier for evaluation?
Well, I could suggest a thing. Now, part of it depends on, see, you come in from your own background, and so different people have different backgrounds, of course. As I look at the field now, clearly some of the ideas are going to come from the new technology. Like I like some of the stuff you and your colleagues have done and how to present things and illuminate things, et cetera. I like some of that technology. That's new. AI obviously is going to be a big field, right? So that's going to be a lot. I don't know what goes on with there. That's a little bit beyond me, but that's clearly going to be big. Another thing that hasn't been tapped is the social class issue. Now, before Stafford Hood died, Stafford is a big name and with his cultural kind of background. Stafford called me and he said, Ernie, I'm looking around for some ideas, as he often did. Say, I'm looking around some ideas for social justice. So what would you suggest? And I said, well, we've done a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of stuff done with minority groups and your stuff with African Americans. Been a lot of stuff done with women. What we haven't done much in an evaluation is social class is defined by economic status, pure and simple. Now, Stafford was both an African American and he was also from working class. So he had that kind of working class background. He knew immediately what I thought, or what he knew immediately what I meant. And so that not much has been done with that. And I think something could be done because as I look at a lot of issues in the field, a lot of that comes from inequality, and that's social class equality. It's not just African American stuff and issues for women, but it's also people at the bottom of the uh, pecking order, so to speak. I mean, so there's something to be done in evaluation, looking at stuff that way. Now, the other place to look would be in investing, as separate from economics. I've read in both areas. Investing is a very interesting and very similar in some ways. I happen to be interested in as a field, but there are a lot of ideas that could be work in evaluation. Also, something like behavioral economics, not neoclassical economics, but behavioral economics that focuses on kinds of things, how people actually behave. Now, I tried a couple of those ideas out at some point in my career, and that was one of my failures. I tried out transaction cost economics, looking at trying to appraise a new innovation by looking at three criteria. And that didn't go down very well. I found that people in education, at least, were not very interested in economic ideas for whatever reason. It always puzzled me. So that didn't work so well. So those are three. I think I jot down another note or so. Let me see what else I've got down here. I do think something's to be done more with literature. I was an English major originally, and I tried to write I did write an evaluation novel one time. I read, and that this did not work very well, but I was worried about the politics of evaluation. How do we inform students about politics of evaluation? There's nothing mostly in the literature that does that. At least maybe there wasn't back then. So I decided to write. I thought All the King's Men was a novel by Robert Penn Warren that actually taught me more about politics than anything else. So I decided to write a novel, which I did about that. Well, you know, evaluators tend to be technical people, and the idea of teaching a novel just didn't go down very well. But I do think I'd say that was something before its time, maybe, or didn't work well. I had ideas didn't work well, but I think there's something to be done with literature there for somebody who's pretty creative, particularly in some of these new, along with some of these new technology modes. I don't know what that is, but I think that's some place for further investigation.
Okay. Well, great. Those of you in our audience, if this would be a good time to add some questions to the Q&A box. I'm going to ask you one more, Ernie, and it kind of builds off what we've talked about. So given, the political pressures, the information manipulation, and the conflicts of interest, particularly institutional, that you've warned us about, I'm wondering what we should be paying attention to as evaluators today to protect the integrity of our field.
Well, I think let me say, first of all, I just read this new history of capitalism by Sven Beckert. 1100 years, since 1100, it's 1100 pages long, so it seems like a long time, right? But it takes capitalism from 1100 to now. The period we're in now, he says, is a transition period, which can be very rough. That is, you have the breakdown of neoliberalism, so-called, between the mid-70s and about 2008. 2008 was a blow up with the subprime mortgage thing, which I talked about in that paper I gave at Scriven's seminar when he retired. So this is a transition period. A transition period means the old rules are falling apart. So the old rules were low tariffs, et cetera, free trade, global trade. Now we have tariffs, all kinds of government interference, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the old order is breaking down and we don't have a new order, that leads everybody to feel confused. I mean, everybody is confused. Now, Becker doesn't know how this is going to play out exactly. He says it's pretty much open. So there's a sense in which we could create some new ideas here that might be possibly be better than what we had before, or we could end up with a lot worse stuff. The new emerges out of the old regime, old socioeconomic regime. Now, what does evaluation have to offer generally? Beckert says if capitalism has one idea and one idea only, we definitely have a capitalist system. Make money, accumulate money in private hands to make more money. There is no morality to that whatsoever. So capitalism has flourished in a slave society, in liberal democracies, etc. So but to capitalism itself, there's no morality. Where does the morality come from? It has to come from the government or from the social and cultural institutions. Now, I think of evaluation as a social institution, right? And so therefore, part of what we might do is advance some of the ideas of morality within the confines of evaluation itself. Just as religion advances some ideas about morality contributing to the new system. Okay, what does that mean for novice evaluators coming into the field? What I think they should do is act as what I call moral fiduciaries. Now, a fiduciary in finance is a person who is dedicated to being worried about the welfare of his client. So, an investment advisor can advise you to invest in something that's for his benefit rather than your own. But if he's a fiduciary, he's obligated to be concerned about his client's investment. So I'm saying in evaluation, evaluators, whatever kind of methods they use, whatever they are, they should be concerned within the evaluation about the welfare of everybody in the evaluation. I don't mean run around worrying about their health and stuff. I mean, they have to be concerned in the evaluation about how the people are being affected by the evaluation and within the evaluation. So that entails certain kinds of behavior. One thing, fiduciary is honest, they have integrity, and they have some sense of morality about being concerned about people's welfare. Within this kind of chaotic situation we're in, lots of conflict of interest, corruption is a big deal, lack of trust is a big deal. So what a fiduciary would do within the evaluation is establish trust by being concerned about other people's welfare. He or she would also be honest, so that would address the corruption kind of issue. And they should be concerned about the moral effects of what they're doing. That's a very general thing that I think applies to all evaluators. And the best way in a corrupt system to act is to be honest. That's my view.
Okay, great. Now that's very powerful. Very challenging in the society we're living in right now. Yeah, but they're real important to remember. Well, we have some questions, and thank you, Francis Dumaine, for starting us off. He says a huge thank you to Professor House for all he did for the field. My question is the following: how can we better integrate considerations related to environmental sustainability in our evaluation work so that we expand the concept of social justice to include natural factors?
Well, I think that's an area of opportunity there. I mean, Pat's got his got a blue marble kind of approach to that. And I think that's an important area where we might see some action there. I don't know how to do it. Don't get me wrong. I don't know exactly what to do and how to do it. But I think that is an area where new people in the field could make some substantial progress there. And it's not one, of course, that's favored within the current administration by any means. But that doesn't mean, if you think of yourself the way the scientists would think of themselves. Now, we had this magnificent National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, sitting on the hill there, and it's done all this great work in climate research. Now, the administration is now tearing it apart. So what should a scientist do, the climate scientist do? Well, you can't keep them from tearing it apart. But what I think you should do is continue the field. And you think someday we will get through this and we will continue the work, even if the work is continued outside the country. China's got a lot of stuff going on inside. China's the world's biggest polluter, but they're also the biggest investor in climate research. So we got all this stuff going. So I think you continue to push forward on those kind of ideas, in spite of the times being very difficult and turbulent.
Yeah, great thinking on that issue. Um, in the current era where science and expertise are increasingly being questioned and or ignored, how can evaluators continue to convince programs and funders that strong evaluation, design, and expertise bring added value?
Right. Well, I think this is a time when science is being questioned. Tom Swan, unfortunately, very recently deceased, one of the real leaders in the field, wrote a paper called Post-Normal Evaluation. And he based it on the ideas of science and post-science, where science is attacked, same thing with evaluation. I think one thing, and this goes back to Jeremy Grantham's idea, and it is an autobiography I've been reading, where he said when he had these new approaches and techniques, what he did in convincing people was simply explain sincerely to the people he's trying to get clients to invest with him. So to convince those people, he explained exactly why his process and his technique would lead to something worthwhile. Sincerely, he believed that. Now, he happened to be a value investor. So he would go around and find stocks which are undervalued and expect those stocks eventually to revert to the mean. And rather than to do high pressured sales, when he went around and talked to people, he would simply tell them his thinking about what he was doing and going to do. And that was very successful. Up to the point where when he told people in the great big .com bust, he told people to get out of the market, stay out. And it was way too early. And then a lot of his clients left him. So there was a price he paid. And of course, it all did blow up eventually. But then his book is titled How to Be a Long-Term Investor in a Short-Term World. That was the subtitle book. And that we're kind of faced that, how to be a long-term investor in a short-term thinking world. So I would say tell people what you're doing, how you're doing it, why it's going to help, and what's the best thing to do. Same thing as Grantham did. She explained these kinds of his actual investment strategy of what they were doing to his clients, prospective clients.
Okay. Great example of bringing one field into to another. Excellent. Another anonymous attendee asks, given the differences in perspectives that arise in a workplace and are compounded by the current political situation, how do you get a plurality of voices on board with evaluation, and what compromises do you have to make?
Well, I think one way to do it is to, first of all, you need to recognize who these various people are and what perspectives they have. That means you come to understand what they're talking about. Some people call that cognitive empathy. That is, you come to understand what they're thinking from their perspective. That doesn't mean you agree with them necessarily, but you understand what they're saying and you listen to them and you talk to them and you go through all this with them. Then they think you understand. That helps. Now, that doesn't make them agree with each other. But then you bring those ideas, knowing their perspectives. Let's say if you're doing an evaluation, so you create some data and stuff and have them come in and look at that data and have their different views and expressions about that data. That's one way I would go about it. I did that with a bilingual program in Denver, which is extremely contentious, bringing people together, collecting data, bringing them together, having them talk about the data. Then they'd say, oh, I don't like this. Okay, I'll go collect some more data. Bring it. So an iterative process, if you set that up and have them talk about it. And I found over time, they began to understand each other's perspective better. Because I'm listening to their perspectives, trying to respond to them. Then they start expressing that. Then they start understanding other people's perspectives. That helps with agreement. But it is based on not persuasive techniques, but simply understanding people's points of view and discussing through those views.
Great, great. Bliss Paik has a question. He says, "Hi, I'm new to the field of evaluation and wondering how evaluation would look in the context of AI. How do we rationalize that AI is an emerging field but has harmful effects on certain communities?"
Well, almost all new innovations do have. I mean, all new innovations end up having some bad effects on other communities. Think of the railroad. Railroads came along. Well, that didn't help an awful lot of industries, right? It created a new industry. I think as an evaluator, you try to show the benefits of the new technology if you're evaluating AI, and also look at there are negative features too. You look at the costs of it. So you're bringing both to the fore, looking at the people who are going to be badly affected by this stuff. Now, if it's like the people with AI, since you put so much money into it, the big corporations are going to lay off huge numbers of people. Well, then somebody needs to look at that and bring that forward. Now, they'll run into trouble eventually if they do it that way. That's one real possibility. So I don't understand AI enough, but I have evaluated a lot of innovations. And there is a kind of a pattern here. I looked at, for example, the first computer-based, I did an evaluation of the first computer-based evaluation system, education system at the University of Illinois at one time. So what I found, one thing about the new technology is if you can't keep it working, people will walk away from it. But also, you may judge, you may estimate people's ability to use new technology too. So there are effects of the new technology, and I think those are going to be great with AI, or not going to be positive. So we try to record that and evaluate that, bring that into the evaluation.
Great, great. Yeah. Certainly a new field for us to be evaluating, and especially getting the advocates to think about side effects and maybe underperformance of things. I get a lot of requests these days, and I'm amazed at how major they think the effects are going to be of a small, AI intervention without much thinking of the harmful effects. So totally agree.
Perfect place for evaluation.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I think, we could really, shape what's happening in society. Eleanor Futch says there is a shift in the philosophy of data, with data being both a tool and a resource for decision making, advocacy, exploitation, etc. What does this mean for the field, especially considering you call for evaluators to serve as moral fiduciaries?
Well, I do think, let's say when the evaluator does the work in evaluation, they have some obligation to advance those ideas, to take those and try to, I don't know what you want to call it, persuade other people that that's what the evaluation calls for. So I would call for active engagement of the evaluator in advancing the ideas of the evaluation forward. I'll give you an example. When I did the Illinois gifted evaluation, big evaluation, 4 years, $5 million, and I wanted to make this presentation to the state legislature, but I didn't know how to go about it. So I got a legislator aside, and I said, how do I make it? He did. I just go in there and talk to these guys. That's not going anywhere. He said, look, there's one guy who's a key guy in the legislature. He's the chair of the School Problems Commission. And you need to talk to that guy. and go through him, because nothing is going to go by without his approval. So I called this guy and set up a dinner with him, went over to Springfield, and we sat there having dinner. We had about 2 or 3 martinis, and I told him the whole story of the evaluation. He finally says, okay, I believe you, I believe you. So he took the information, set up the presentation to a certain committee inside the legislature, and they bought everything. They gave the program where it was strong, more money, and they reorganized the program the way we wanted. And that was kind of an active lobbying effort on my part, see, to make the thing work. So I think that's okay if you're going to do that. You don't have to have the martinis. You, I think it's one way. I think you do need to advance the stuff. Can't simply put stuff out there. If I understand what the question was, I may have misunderstood the question. You can't just put stuff out there and think people are just going to say, "Oh, that's evaluation, so I'm buying." You have to make more effort than that sometimes to make it work.
Great. Yeah, that gets us all into, how do we get use, and a lot of, the research we have on use and influence, now is probably needs some updating given the environment,
Right.
we're working in. Dan Pell asks the question, it feels like on the national and world stage, we're seeing a shift from deliberative decision-making into domination by personalities-based instincts and serving entrenched interests. In these circumstances, how can evaluators avoid falling into the disciplinary Cassandra complex so that our work is heard, valued, and used?
Well, I think is good to go back to the idea of stages of not stages, but progression of capitalist societies here. We're at a transition stage. I don't think this is going to stay last forever. Now, admittedly, it could last for several years. So if you're talking about the Trump administration, that's probably best described by something called neo-royalism, which some organizational theorists have come up with. So Trump acts a little bit like maybe King Henry VIII, where he makes personal decisions, decides this, that, the other thing. He doesn't want the climate research, so he does away with that, so on and so forth. So he's acting very autocratically, and he's got a set of people around him that he kind of feeds into this stuff. Some of those are AI people, by the way. But at the same time, I don't think this is a transition. I don't think it's going to be around forever. Now, you might say, how do we live through this period? It's hard for me to see how you're going to take a system like that and make it last very long, because we'll be going to something else pretty soon. So I do see the kind of thing Trump's doing to be transitory. So living in a system like that, if you think it is going to be long term, again, I go back to the idea, you stick with your science. If you're a climate scientist, you stick with that, do the best you can. Maybe you go overseas and do work, I don't know, if you can't manage it here. Or maybe you do something else, but you stick with your science, you stick with evaluation as a place of high integrity, right? If we don't have integrity in evaluation, we don't have anything. We don't have anything. There is a statement I like, one statement. One of the, Brad Ashbury is one of the smart guys in the field at the University of Melbourne, did a review of my book one of my books about 10 years ago. And also looked at my work more generally. But he prefaced it with a quote from Thomas Jefferson. And Jefferson said, when it comes to fashion, go with the flow. When it comes to principle, stand like a rock. So I do think you have to preserve the integrity of the evaluation itself. Elsewise, it becomes meaningless. Same thing with science. You can't just bend the science to make the people who don't like the science happy.
Great, great. Someone you know has asked a question, Deb Rock. And Deb says, so great to see you, and also a big note of gratitude for all your contributions to our field. The times we're in seem overwhelming and daunting for evaluators. You have already given us some strategies for dealing with some of the challenges, but I'm curious if you see parallels with previous times that we got through that would give hope to evaluators today, especially those new to the field.
Yeah, well, sorry, I can't see it, Deb, but yeah, I think we have been through the age between 1945 to the mid-70s was one that was pretty good for evaluation. That's when evaluation got started. I started in 1967. That was the kind of the tail end of the New Deal that Roosevelt started. A lot of government programs, a lot of money trying to help people. And the big kicker there was 1965 with the ESEA, Elementary Secondary Education Act. And things boomed from then on. Senator Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, put a rider on that bill, said everything should be evaluated. And that became contagious. So then after that, everything, all these programs had to be evaluated. They didn't have to be, but people just took evaluation on. That was a great period. Then we started edging in the mid-70s into, by that time, so 67, 73. So when Reagan came in as president, about 1980, then things changed. And we went through a rough period there, quite rough, when they cut back the money in evaluation. Evaluation had to be done this way or that way or the other way. So that was a similar period in my view. Now, maybe this period is a little rougher even than that, because we did make it through that okay as evaluators. But a lot of people did switch around, had to do different things, different issues became prominent. Reagan wanted certain kinds of things. So, for example, he didn't like the Great Society programs, wanted to cut back on them. So some people came forward and claimed that those Great Societies, like Charles Murray, claimed those Great Society programs were not any good. So I took a look at Murray's book, and here I'm working as an evaluator. I look at Murray's work and say, well, no, look at what you've done. So I evaluated his work so I could act in that regard. However, the government would ask me to do that. I was criticizing the government's work. So I shifted into a somewhat different role at that point. And I think that period seems to me most like that. Now, this one's, I think, rougher period because the elements that carried over from the age, what's called the golden age in the United States, 45 to 73, and then from about 73 to 2008, that was a smoother transition, but we had a lot of rough times in it. This is looking a lot rougher, and maybe we're going to end up with a more radical transformation of what we've had before in the future.
Okay, great, thank you. For the audience, I do have more questions than I can ask, but I want to thank everybody for contributing. I think we have time for a few more. If you're okay with that, Ernie, you have
Sure.
one?
Sure.
Okay, good. If possible, could you comment on how your notion of beauty in evaluation has evolved since you first came up with it, considering the environment in which we currently operate?
Well, yeah, this is another error I made in my my report. in 1980 or 79, I was pulling this book together, and I now saw evaluations as social institutions. Yeah. It's technical, it's political, it's cultural, right? All those things. It's a social institution, complex social institution itself. And I was trying to think of some phrase that would, in fact, kind of capture that. And so I came up, I remember John Keats' idea, truth is beauty and beauty is truth. That's all you know and all you need to know. That's from a Keats poem. So I used that and I put justice on him, truth, beauty, and justice. Now, when I sent this paper out to a few colleagues a few months ago, Michael Scriven immediately responded and said, "Oh, awesome paper, but you left out your truth, beauty, and justice statement and how you arrived at that." And I did leave it out. So here's the beauty aspect. You think of evaluation, you go back, see that 1980 book of mine. I've got a couple articles on the aesthetics of evaluation. So evaluation often is based on underlying metaphors, right? The metaphor, even the people who do it are not aware of, but they actually base things on underlying metaphors. There's also an aesthetic kind of sense of evaluation and evaluation reports where you try to pull everything together. If you get everything together and account for all things together, you've got a coherence. And when that coherence comes together, it's both, you think it's truthful and it also feels right. So kind of a beauty to it somehow. The way mathematicians can look at a certain equation and say, man, that's beautiful. It combines a whole bunch of things together and it's all very compact, and they apply the term beauty to it. So I think that's how I came up with that. And thanks to Pat for reminding me, I left it out, but truth, beauty, and justice. But there's more to be done on the beauty issue, on the aesthetic side. That's another place where you could get out and do some more work. Those who are actually interested in doing some research in on evaluation, because you could expand that idea. Coherence is the thing that holds the truth and the beauty together. But there are other aspects. You look at the kind of image you use, the kind of writing that's done, how the reports are done. I think that's all going to get transformed now with the kind of media we're on right now. So you're going to be doing more maybe visual things than what we used to do, for example, and present it in a more visual way, in which case there's going to be a new aesthetics to that.
Okay, great. Well, you made it clear it was Patton who gave you that feedback toward the end, but in the beginning you said Scriven gave you that feedback, and I went, okay, he's on AI now, asking Scriven to, but what you meant. But anyway, that was great.
Yeah.
Well, hello, Ian Davies. He sends his regards to you, Ernie. And what practical suggestions would you have for evaluators to avoid systemic violence in their practice, violence against knowledge?
I don't know if you can prevent that. I think because we seem to be in times when their knowledge is being attacked, the science is being attacked, and there are other motives for that. There are motives for that. I can't see how we can deal with stopping it. For example, if you take environmental science again, if we say, well, they really shouldn't be questioning global warming, but people are against it. I don't mind some people being against it, but of course, when you just dissolve the institutions that are doing the science, that's really a vicious attack on it. I don't know how you stop it. Why is it being done? Because the fossil fuel industries are big supporters of people who are attacking the science. People in why is medical science under attack? The people who have something to gain from it are attacking it. So I don't know how you prevent that, but I do think what we have to do is defend it and argue against that kind of those attacks. I don't know how you prevent the attacks themselves.
Great. Well, we've made it to the last question. And Carlisle Levine has given us a good one to end on. She says some people talk about it's time for re-envisioning the evaluation ecosystem. Do you see any need for that re-envisioning? From your perspective, what is working well and what should we try to preserve? And what might we try to change to make evaluation more relevant and useful?
Well, I think you need to spend more time talking to the people in evaluations. I mean, and again, to try, I would say one of the things lacking is cognitive empathy. And so you have to spend more time talking to them and getting to see the world from their point of view, which again, I say you don't agree with it, but I understand if I'm talking to Trump supporters, I try to understand the world from their point of view. I don't have to agree with them, but how are they seeing the world to make them? I'm assuming that they're rational people and that they can come to some kind of conclusion. If I talk to enough people, I can see the kind of information they might relate to, but I have to understand it. I can't just think it up on my own. I have to engage with these people and talk to them about it. Now, maybe it's pure self-interest, or maybe that they're coming at it from a racist position or something. So, but there's not much I could agree with there. So I would just have to disagree with them altogether. But the usefulness, I think, comes from understanding from other people's point of view how they're coming at it and what would help them understand things differently.
Okay. Well, let me say on behalf of the 150 or so that joined us today, thank you so much for sharing your article with us, your latest thoughts on creativity and evaluation, and really inspiring us, to keep building what you started a few decades ago. So with that, I want to conclude our webinar for today. And thank you, everybody. Hope to see many of you in our March program or our summer program that will come after that. Be well, everyone.